on my mind. Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the award-winning combat sports podcast, The Boxing Show. With me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. As always, I'd like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, joined by the usual twosome, Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clarke. There's a lot to get through today, a lot to review from this past weekend as we look ahead also to this weekend's Riyadh season show in Wembley. How we doing, guys?
Good, mate.
Good, yeah.
Good. So you got wry smile. What's up, Barry? You okay?
Nothing. Don't fucking like you, do I?
So always have to
I don't say it every week, but it's just implied, isn't it? So I smile at you because I don't know. Come on, let's get on. Let's go. I gotta go. I got a place to go. I gotta go home for dinner.
Okay, we're on a time limit today. Barry's got to get back. But Andy, how are you?
Good, yeah. Good, had a good weekend. Covered a Swiss show on Saturday night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a show from Bern. Leander Struppler, Swiss Pro Boxing. So there's a guy called Angelo Pena, top of the bill, actually, who looked good. Who's boxing for WBO Intercontinental. There was a guy on the undercard, Georgi Svetchev, who I quite like the look of. Has some big, heavy hands on him, as someone with a name like that should have. But yeah, it was good. It was good. You know, he had a couple of WBO ranking belts on the line, basically. The first time that Switzerland's had a card like that for a while. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Any Swiss boxing in your weekend, Barry?
No, I didn't. I had some chocolate. That helps.
Swiss unboxing of Swiss chocolate.
Yeah,
it's sort of in the same realm. But yes, as I mentioned at the start, we do have a lot to get through, and of course, a lot to look ahead to this weekend. So we're going to start, of course, this past weekend in Las Vegas. Andy, going to come to you first. We're going to put it out there. Out of all of the predictions that we've had on this show, and we've had, a varying different levels of accuracy, I don't think we've ever had one quite as on the nose as your Erislandy, Lara, Danny Garcia predictions. So we're going to get that out there first, but we're going to start with them because he's desperate to get that out. So much so that I woke up on Sunday to a message, "Hi mate, I know you're probably not awake yet, but just to let you know that was pretty much perfect, wasn't it?"
Yeah. I pretended that I needed to talk to you about something else so I could just slide it in. It was... I was very specific about the whole thing, and I decided last week that I would be a bit more specific, a bit bolder, I guess. But it just looked to me like if ever that was going to happen, for that kind of scenario to emerge, those are the exact circumstances, aren't they? Somebody with nothing left to prove, who's had a really good career, who's been out for ages, who probably feels like he's done, would have thought loads of times, am I done? Am I not done? Don't really know. But you get the opportunity to come back, move up in weights, you don't have to beat your body back down, all of that stuff. And it's a shot to nothing because nobody will think any the less of you if you lose. It is kind of tailor-made for getting in there and discovering midway through the fight, oh dear, it's not really there anymore. And that's what happened.
We are, of course, talking about Erislandy, Lara and Danny Garcia, which was for the WBA middleweight title on the Canelo Berlanga undercard. We'll start there because we've got a lot to get through, and I think the Canelo Berlanga section will actually be quite a lot chunkier than we expected potentially before the fight. Barry, going to come to you on Erislandy, Lara and Danny Garcia, as Andy correctly alluded to there, and of course, so accurately before the fight. There wasn't a lot left from Danny Garcia.
He wasn't accurate, though.
Go on.
Because he quit. His father didn't pull him out, he quit. His father asked him, he said, "So you were wrong. Like, you were close."
No, I was right.
You were close, but you were
I was
wrong.
right.
Well, whatever. You've never boxed, mate.
I was right.
Remember that one? You've never boxed. What? You can't say anything. But he looked lost, didn't he? To be fair. And Lara just controlled everything, bullied him at times. Well, not at times. Bullied him throughout every round, pretty much. He just couldn't get off. Too small for him. Had no range. Couldn't get his punches going. He had a few little successes, but nothing. And Lara's just cleverly of nicking forward, but sitting on that back foot to just take that step back. Nice wide stance, you can get in out of distance quite easy. Just beat him up a little bit. And he could have carried on, he didn't want to. He had enough. Like, just I felt sorry for him, actually. You could see his face after. He was just thinking like, oh man, I'm no good anymore. Just haven't got it. That's a horrible realization, that is, when you just go, I haven't got it. Can't do it. No, I mean, he's not going to dip down levels. See, that's the problem. So, and boxers, we always lie to ourselves. We think, oh, if I go down to super welter, I'll be better there. And a guy who's not so physically gifted as Lara, when maybe some guy comes at me, I can be more competitive. I got power, but you're just fooling yourself. I think that's the last we see of him. And it's a sad ending to it. Not sad ending. It's a common ending to a quite fantastic career. I thought, at one time he was supersonic, wasn't he? And so, but you can't keep it forever. And I guess something like Lara, we all thought, though he did get a spot on, but we all thought that this stylistically wasn't a very good match for him, especially at this stage of his career. And Lara was brilliant because he was aggressive and cautious in the same manner. It wasn't the greatest fight to watch, it was full of excitement, but it was quite enjoyable to watch how he was slowly just dissecting him.
He didn't take any chances, did he?
No, but that's what he does, isn't it? That's the way. Even when he's being aggressive, he doesn't like to take chances. And that's why he always throws long punches, because long punches are harder to counter off when you have the reach that he has. Andy,
we're going to talk about a middleweight fight later on in the podcast, of course, this weekend on that Wembley undercard. Lara, dominant performance, but admittedly against somebody whose best years and best days are long behind him, and certainly best weight is much lower than the 157-pound catch weight. If you're Hamza Shiraz and Tyler Denny and you're looking at that performance from Lara, are you encouraged?
I don't think you look at it and are fearful, put it that way. I think that division is quite open. Obviously, Shiraz was going after Carlos Adames for a bit, wasn't he? And that didn't happen. But I think if you win that fight, whoever wins that fight, you can legitimately look at any of the champions really and feel like you wouldn't be taking some unrealistic tilt to take any of those fights. Yeah, he's a good fighter, Lara. He's been a good fighter for a long time, but difficult to know where he is exactly off the back of fighting Garcia, because Garcia just didn't really have anything left, did he? And hopefully it makes it quite an easy one to go out on. Nobody wants to go out on the back of a defeat, but almost everybody does. And if you get in there and you find yourself on your stool halfway through, thinking to yourself, I haven't got it anymore, that's actually not that bad a thing to happen to you, because you're not thinking, oh, it was a lucky shot, it was this, it was that. You know what it was. And that hopefully will make it quite easy for him to think, I had one foot out of the door anyway, and now I'm definitely going to take the other foot out the door too, because my work here is done.
Yeah, it didn't strike me as the type of performance that leads me to believe we'll see Danny Garcia again. One fight that we did see again this past weekend, Barry, was the returning Caleb Plant in I think probably a more entertaining fight than expected against Trevor McCumby, but ultimately got the job done.
2 knockdowns, really.
Yeah, ultimately got the job done in the end, Caleb Plant, but wasn't easy, particularly early on.
No, it was a hard fight. McCumby wasn't bad, was he? He got real power. He hit him down with hit him on the arm, it looked like.
He sort of caught a left hook.
Pushed him over. But the one, was it the second round that he went down? And the referee said,
at the end of the second round.
That was a great shot. That was really, that's bad refereeing, that is, because that was a clear knockdown, that was. I mean, it didn't have an effect on the fight, because, it had an effect on Plant. But what Plant does very well is the next round, he goes out and he works him. I think once he adjusted and started to be aggressive and getting closer, then he just tired McCumby out, and then he could start letting his punches go. But up until that point, he was boxing well. McCumby was losing the rounds, most of them, I thought. But at the midway stage, it was sort of like maybe after 5 rounds, it was anyone's fight. Though you just felt that, Plant, I like Plant, actually. I think he's very good. I think he's really tough. I think he punches hard enough to get your respect. And he's clever. Fast hands, really good reflexes. Really good reflexes. The way you miss with a punch, he turns and comes back straight away. Really, really fluent. But McCumby's a better fighter. I thought, when you step up the levels, you might get exposed to just being a power puncher, and then you come up with someone who's slick and can make you work, make you miss, make you pay. But he never faltered. He kept trying, but ultimately in the end, he just up against a better fighter, and the finish was fantastic from Plant.
Andy, it wasn't what we kind of become accustomed to seeing from Caleb Plant. Kind of Barry mentioned there, you're used to seeing him, the sort of slick outside skill set that he's got. But when that wasn't quite working for him, he kind of abandoned that, got on the inside, and really gave McCumby a good working over in those middle rounds before getting, as Barry said, a really good stoppage.
Yeah, he did. It was a good fight, and me too. I thought, I didn't think McCumby was as good as that, to be honest. I kind of dismissed him a bit before the fight, and his stock, has risen, hasn't it, off the back of that performance. And with somebody like Plant, I think he might be one of those fighters who has chosen to make that kind of stylistic shift, or just wants to show people that he can do that, because I think people wondered whether he could do that. And that can get to people at times, can't it? Sometimes they can decide that they need to go there. They need to kind of prove their credentials to people, no matter how much they've achieved. It's the one thing that they never like to be questioned.
It's one thing. It's one thing he said. One of the first things that came out of his mouth in the post-fight press conference. I thought everybody said that I can't fight inside. So it's clearly part of the thinking.
And it's really common. Yeah. You see people do it all the time. I mean, the best ever example is like Tim Bradley against Ruslan Provodnikov. He chose deliberately to fight completely the wrong fight because he wanted to show people that he could, and it can come at a cost. But that's just that's how they are, isn't it? That's even if you realise that it's maybe not the most advisable thing to do, they're still going to do it. But yeah, it was good. The whole card, I think, that fight anyway in the top of the bill probably over-delivered, didn't they, in terms of what we were expecting.
I quite like the Stephen Fulton Carlos Castro fight as well. I thought that was a good fight on the prelims. I thought Fulton was fortunate. I thought Castro beat him. I thought he was very fortunate. Included, I don't know if you saw that on the prelims. Got dropped heavy with a right hand, and anyway, he got the decision in the end. But I thought it was very, very good. Problem was those 9 rounds or so with Lara and Garcia at 3:30 in the morning was very difficult. But yeah, I thought it was a decent pacing on the card. Just on Caleb Plant, Barry, of course, he's come up short against Canelo Alvarez, and David Benavidez now holds the coveted WBA interim super middleweight title. Who next for him? There's obviously some other names knocking around super middleweight. There's of course Edgar Berlanga, who we're going to discuss shortly. There's Jaime Munguia, Christian and Billy, all well matched fights, it seems, for somebody like Caleb Plant.
You want a world title fight, wouldn't you? Though you'll argue he is a world champion, but he's not. But you want that. I think you want the biggest name you can get. But there's all exciting matchups, and that's the thing. Now he's shown that he can be exciting. He's shown that before against Benavidez, that he can tough it out and stuff. But even against Canelo, but he's had those fights now, those big fights, and I think that's what he'll want. This was probably a step down for him to get back into it. Now he's shown he can box and beat people quite convincingly at this level, though still show a little bit of a vulnerability. And I think there might be more vulnerabilities now than there were before, even though he looks a better fighter than he was before, if that makes any sense. You sometimes see that. They mention on commentary, sometimes you see that when someone gets hurt or knocked down or knocked out, whatever it is, stopped. You don't know what's changed, but there seems to be a change where they are more susceptible to getting hurt. And he looked like he was hurt a few times. So maybe that makes him more of a sellable product, ironically. And anyone, like someone like Berlanga, we're going to talk about that in a minute, how good he did in his fight against Canelo, will fancy, however fast he is and however clever he is, that I can hurt him. And that'll be so Jaime Munguia, with this high work rate, would think he'll just get to work him out. Let's not forget, the reason why Plant had so many questions over his toughness, I guess it was, is because it was Truax, wasn't he? When he boxed Truax, and he just looked like a guy who could box fast, but under pressure he just couldn't really hold his feet enough to stop you from walking through him, and he struggled a little bit. So I think that was why I think we're all probably still thinking about him then, but I think he's evolved since then to be a guy who's physically tougher, physically stronger. So yeah, any one of those. I think I want to see Berlanga and Munguia. So I think that's one of the best fights to make in that division. So I see some Billy, and Billy looks brilliantly destructive, but he's hittable, and he looks like a guy who can be outboxed, but he also looks like a guy who can be outboxed until he hits you. Do you know what I mean? He'd be outboxed until he walks you down at some point. So that would be a great fight.
A fight like that as well. Somebody like Mbili is unpredictable and explosive. You can get caught with a shot that you're not expecting.
And he does, doesn't he, Plant, as well? He does. We've seen that on Saturday night. So but he gets up as well, and he'll dog it out, and he can adapt in a fight, which is a real trait that most boxers don't have. So he's a really good fighter. So in Billy, that would be if that WWE title became a real world title, then that would be maybe the route for him as well. But also promoters and TV networks and all how that works. He's ESPN, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's top rank. Yeah. There's David Morrell over on PBC, but he's gone up to light heavy. But I think he said he'd gone up to light heavy. He said Benavidez is chasing Canelo. I'm going to chase Benavidez, which I thought was a brilliant line. But he, I think, could probably do super middleweight. But it will ultimately be whether or not the fight's big enough. If you're Caleb Plant, do you want to fight David Morrell?
No, not Morrell. Morell's good. Morell's got a great. He's clever. He's fast, and he
punches hard.
Yeah, there's a lot there. He's almost a powerful version of Lara, if you will. Not quite the same style, but a guy who will be.
He's like the new wave Cuban style, isn't he? Which is like a little bit more aggressive and youthful, and will come and try and take your head off. And
avoid it unless they can show you some razzmatazz, I think.
How about this one for you, Andy? Caleb Plant versus Chris Eubank Jr. You like that one?
Yeah, I knew you'd say that. I mean, I think it'd be interesting, but it's never going to happen, is it?
We don't have enough time to second guess Chris Eubank Jr. We've got a lot to get through. Let's move on to the main event. Of course, we saw a return to victory for Rolando Romero on the undercard as well, former 140-pound champion, a decision win over Manuel James or Jaimez. But yes, on to the main event. Barry, going to come to you. You just mentioned there about Edgar Berlanga. A good performance, albeit in a losing one against Canelo Alvarez in a fight similar to what we just said about Caleb Plant and Trevor McCumby. That was a lot more entertaining than I had anticipated it being.
Well, you don't know how tough people are until they show it. That's the truth of it. And what he showed is the appetite to want to fire back under pressure is what will take him to a different level. I mean, he couldn't get the Canelo level, and Canelo showed that there's still plenty of life in him, which as well, but also showed that he can't get the finish anymore. That's a big factor as well. He hasn't got that. Canelo's lost that acceleration of pace in his work. Once he's hurt you, he doesn't rattle off the combinations. It's all big, heavy shots. But he's been fighting like that since he's been a super middleweight. That's how he stopped Saunders, and that's how he stopped Smith, Plant. That's how he stopped them all. To unify that title, that's how he stopped them all, by just methodically walking them down and beating them up. What's happening now? This new wave of super middleweights, although Plant's still in it, but they all seem bigger. I know Callum Smith is 6'11". I know he's really tall, but he's slender, isn't he? Tall, and he might have been massively struggling for weight. But someone like Berlanga looked so big.
It's 193 pounds.
He looked absolutely massive, didn't he?
But he also looked he looked big, but he looked like he made the weight well. Like when you see Callum Smith, sometimes he looked, because he's so big, but he looked like he'd had a hard time making the weight. They all do, but you could visibly see it in him. But but Berlanga looked full of energy, as Munguia did. Munguia's not the tallest, but he's a big lump, maybe. But Berlanga's massive for the weight, and I think a guy with less bulk and strength wouldn't have lasted the distance against Canelo. I thought Canelo was really good. Didn't give him cut the ring off all the time, put him under pressure, continuously put him under pressure, landed some wicked shots. His shot selection, that uppercut that he gets, that angle through the uppercut through the middle, it's just a thing of beauty. And that knockdown, what was it, third round?
Yeah.
That was just amazing. Like it was just I know, like beautiful things in boxing. That's one of the beautiful things you watch, the beautifulness of boxing. Because first of all, I thought he feinted with the left hook and then feinted with the jab and threw the left hook, but he's no telling his shot. He just throws it right from the shoulder, bam. And that's to get the purchase in the shot like that, to see it and do it. It looks easy. I'll use it as a gap, just throw the left hook. But then you'll do this, you'll do something, or you have to disguise it by feinting, which is clever. But he goes straight from here, bam, with a movement. No, I could do that. You could do it, probably. You could do it. But there'd be nothing on it.
The power on it.
Because that's me. But most people, yeah, but he gets the power. That might put you to sleep. Not Berlanga, though. Berlanga was angry, wasn't he? He's banging the floor. He just didn't see it. It was just a beautiful shot. But Berlanga toughed it out, and when he was under pressure, he fired back just at the right time, just to make Canelo know. And at the end of the fight, you could see the marks on Canelo's face for testament how well Berlanga did. And he surprised me. I just thought at some point he was just weird. Canelo did all the things that we thought he was going to do. He played his part, but Berlanga wouldn't fall over, and he wouldn't give in, and he toughed it out. I thought he made it a really entertaining fight. I thought, and it shows with Canelo, can he get that finish anymore? Does he have that destructive power to do? Can he get that acceleration in his pace of his work to get that rally to finish you off when he's got you on the hook. And for Berlanga, he's shown, listen, he can come again. And he ain't got to be Canelo, but anyone else out there, he'll give them a really hard fight or maybe win.
Andy, we all sat here, and this wasn't one of the predictions that we were as accurate. Certainly your Lara Garcia one, but we all predicted a Canelo stoppage. Do you think what we saw at the weekend was signs of Canelo slowing down? Was Berlanga better than we expected, or was it a bit of a mixture of both? It's
a mixture of the two. I think, as Barry said, gears for Canelo has been a little bit of a problem for a while. Like the gears, that ability to accelerate, to click into that higher gear and really take somebody apart and force a stoppage, that started to dissipate a while ago. But that's what happens when you get older. You see that with everybody, really. But we talked about it last week, didn't we? And he certainly hasn't lost the ability to pull the trigger when he sees an opening in the blink of an eye, because that's exactly what he did for the knockdown. So that ability to fire is definitely still there. Which for him is a really good thing. Berlanga, as you mentioned, was absolutely massive, and when you looked at the two of them in the ring, that was the first thing I thought when you saw them like up close. 193 pounds. You said that 25 pounds that is, isn't it, to put on after the weigh-in, which is absolutely crazy. And usually if somebody does that, there's that kind of yo-yoing often has such a drastic effect on a fighter that it's not really worth doing. But he looked great, didn't he? And the size definitely did help him. And he surprised us all. He surprised us all. I always do find it slightly difficult to know exactly how much store to set by an unexpectedly good performance in defeat, because he didn't win and he was never winning, but he did do really well. But does that translate into, in a completely different scenario where you're in a fight where it's more 50-50 and the expectation you put on yourself, not so much that you put on yourself, but the external expectation is different and the only acceptable thing is to win? Does that kind of experience translate into you being able to get over the line and win those fights or not? And I think it can be kind of hard to tell, really. You can take a lot from it, but you lost. And that sounds ridiculously harsh, I know, because of the person he was in there with. But taking a form line off a defeat, no matter how good the performance in defeat, can be quite difficult.
I gotta say, I do agree with that. I say that quite often, that you've got to take into stock, but he was trying to win.
He was. You're right.
Like Munguia was, they were what's his name, Charlo. No, I understand that, because when you get hit with big shots, you're looking to just try and survive sometimes. But at some point, you got to try and win a fight. Even if that doesn't mean you got to come forward all the time. However you box, you got to try and win that fight. He was trying to win every set, every round. He was trying to win. I mean, his jab, he had a good jab, actually, better jab than I thought. Canelo took that away, just hitting him. Again, we always say, I got it from Canelo that if you've got power, make him feel it early. That's what I thought of it. But I mean, he showed that again, didn't he? Like he clams you up by whacking you anywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of arms again. Yeah. The hip as well. There's a lot of shots to the hip.
And that's why Berlanga showed bravery, and as Munguia did in his fight, because knowing what's coming, if you make a miss, if you make a mistake, make a miss. If you make a mistake, you still got to throw the shot. He did reduce his jab, and I reduced his opportunities to maybe land some combinations. But he still fired back, and I know what that's like when you get in against someone who's hurting you every shot. You feel every shot. To want to fire, knowing you have to fire, it's easy to say, just fire back. Well, the hell, you fire back and see what happens when you're exposed. Every time that glove leaves your face, every time that arm moves out, all that side is potentially exposed. And also if you're really trying to, it ends up being like this. When you get tired, you throw the right hand, your left hand drops, everywhere's exposed. And that's what you see punches get dropped. You see people say punches can't take a punch. It's because they're coming at you, but when they're throwing, they're exposed, but they're all in, and they get something to get caught coming forward. But he was brave enough to have a go every time, and that shows that mental toughness. But Andy's right. can he be as effective when he's in against a guy who's competitive and he can win? Can he change the gears and change the pattern of a fight and all that sort of stuff? Because he looked like a guy who was a bit of a bully in the ring, not his personality. But then when he stopped knocking people out, he looked quite ordinary, didn't he? And you just thought, he just looks too slow paced, too methodical, too much like when they're going over. This is like he wasn't interested because he wasn't knocking anyone out in the first round, like the first 16 fights he had. But in that one, he had to dig it out, and that's a realization. So that I think now he'll believe in himself more. I think actually, I know what I could do now. I thought I could do. I know it. Once you've been in a hard fight and you've come through the other side, win or lose, with credit, then that can change you. That can change your mindset. See, someone like Canelo, you'll go, I didn't win, but look how well I did. And you look at other fight compared to other super middleweights who he's boxed. Now you did better than most. So but again, lost almost every round. What'd you give him? 2 rounds, maybe.
Yeah.
But wait, isn't it really? So you're praising him for a guy who got absolutely schooled on the scorecards. But it shows Canelo at his age and how many fights he's had and the weight, the natural weight disadvantages and size that he's given up continuously for the last whatever many years. He's still a force. I mean, there's got to be. Where's the wear and tear? Where is it?
Do you not think we've seen any of it? Do you not think we've seen?
He's slowed down, but there's no wear and tear, though, is it? You don't get hurt, do we? Still.
You know what I mean? He was taking he took some clean shots from a guy who can clearly punch to a degree.
He's not blowing up his ass. I mean, he doesn't look as he haven't got that zest. I think that's another thing. Maybe because he's managing the fight better for himself. I can't throw. I can't do what I did against Golovkin in the first 2 fights, and even though I thought he lost them both, but he can't box that way. I can't go like bell to bell non-stop if I have to. I just can't box, so I have to manage it. So I have to be the bully. I think he fights. I think you see some of his stuff in the training camps, and it's all bam in it, bam, bam, bam. It's slower stuff than what it used to be. So he's working on that power. I just slow you down to my pace. Then you got to fight at my pace. That's what he does so well. He slows you down to his pace by beating you, to slowing you, to stopping your enthusiasm to throw punches by hurting you with every shot. Like, it's quite a clever move, but it makes him look vulnerable against someone who's braver. So someone who got faster hands like a Bivol, better feet, that's where they beat him. But you still got to be bigger than him. I still can't. I think this fighter's head will give him trouble. No, but he's still the top dog, isn't he? I don't know. You can't say anything else. He's still the number one. He's not just the face of boxing. He's still the best fighter in his division, I think. Depending who's there. I think Dave Morrell might give him trouble, but I don't. I think he just walks right up to you. I think his ability to slip shots coming forward is still a massively underrated trait that he has. Doesn't get enough credit for that. He doesn't do as good as Duran, but he's pretty close. The way and it's subtle with him. It's not like Duran would roll underneath your shots and do it, and you could see how he was making people miss and walking you down. Canelo does a little bit more subtle, and now he's such an arrogant bully with it in the ring, not his personality. Is that he just blocks the shots though and walks you down that way, and then slips and slides in out of him, a bit like Liam Smith. I think he's been watching Liam Smith. No, but I mean, Liam Smith don't get enough credit because Liam Smith's not this guy just blocks it off. He slips a bit like that, but he does that. Maybe he got it from Canelo. I don't know because he boxed Canelo, but I think he did it before that. But he'll take more. He was blocking the shots of Berlanga, but then he'll slip off that block. So it's all thought with him, and he's still a good fighter. But Berlanga, his stock rose in defeat. So I think, so the fight we want to see with him is Munguia. That's the fight. That's a great fight. It's a brilliant fight to have them two together. I mean, this division now is like arguably, it's not the best division, but one of the most exciting. There's some really good matchups to be made.
Does it all kind of depend on what happens with Canelo, though? Because you'd feel like those fights are going to be made for titles. If you can
forget about the titles. I mean, aren't we at that stage now? We're starting to do that. The thing with forgetting about titles, for us, we just give. I've won a world title. I don't need titles anymore. But I mean, we don't care about titles anymore. We just want to see good fights, like all boxing fans do, and then decide who we think's the best. Because we debate it anyway now, don't we? Because once you have more than one champion, you can debate who's the best anyway, unless they clearly show it. So, but for the fighters, they still want to.
That's it.
And they still want to be a world champion.
Now, Plant will. I mean, I don't know what the situation is with the WBA mandatory, but obviously
it is shit.
Yeah,
but if you're Canelo, why would you I mean, you're the number one, and everybody knows that you can just let those belts go. It's not like anyone's going to think you're not the best in the division anymore.
Yeah, which he's obviously done with the IBF. He didn't want to box William Skull, ducked William Skull, of course. No, but it does, it does make a difference with regards to making those fights between the other guys. Caleb Plant, obviously the WBA interim champion, him and Berlanga had some choice words for each other in the build up to the fight. Is that a fight you'd like to see, Andy?
Yeah, why not? I think there's a few that you could make away from Canelo, because they've basically all boxed him, haven't they, really, if you think about it. I don't really know who else. I don't really know where else he goes in that super middleweight diviison.
Well, this is kind of the conversation.
He'll
now.
end up fighting Crawford, won't he? I know that he kind of had that spat with Turki Al-Sheikh, and it's always good to see someone as big as him kind of flex their muscles a little bit, but ultimately I do think that'll happen because it'll just make so much sense for him to do it.
Negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, why? He's not going to not do it just to continue to try and prove a point. Everybody knows how big he is in the sport. Everybody knows how much power he has. Everybody knows that he doesn't have to do anything. But that doesn't mean you don't still do it if it makes sense for you to do it. And I think it does make sense for him to do it because Crawford's a huge name, obviously, but he would be extremely confident he would win because he's much bigger than him really, really good.
When did he walk away?
We've had this conversation umpteen times on the last couple of years, I think, sort of post Bivol, really, where you kind of look at after the Bivol loss, it's like, okay, well, where does he go for? I don't think anybody thought he was going to retire, but it was like, what's the next stage of his career? And we're kind of at that stage now where the end is maybe not in the next fight or two, but it's not.
Gotta be, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got to be in the last few.
For someone like him, I think it's really, really hard because if you're that mega star, then you can't do what most other people do. Really good fighters included, which is end up losing probably 3 of your last 4. You lose and don't look great. Then you come up with a reason. This is at the highest level. Then you lose again, and it looks like the writing's on the wall, but you can't really leave it there. So you drop down a level, get a win. I'm back, and then you step up to that level, and then you lose again. And that's usually what it takes for someone to walk away. And it's really common, and there's no disgrace in it, and nobody thinks anything the less of anybody for it, or at least they shouldn't. But if you're him, legacy is a word everybody uses, isn't it, with regard to boxing? But you really do want to make sure you get it right. Obviously, Mayweather wandered off undefeated. Canelo lost that undefeated record to Mayweather, obviously, but you've got to get it right. You can't have that kind of fizzle out. You can't have that. So the danger with that is that you're always going to walk away probably feeling like you've got something left, because that's what you'll need to do. You need to get there and call it before you know that you're too much on the decline. Or if you're lucky, you might squeeze one in where you know you are, but you think you can just get that one done. It's tricky.
How does that end, Barry? Terence Crawford, of course, was in Vegas. He was at the fight. He was also at the UFC card around the corner. He's called for that fight repeatedly. I think people, generally speaking, see that as a closer fight after what they saw from Canelo against Berlanga. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with that, but that's the general kind of consensus.
You can argue that if you thought Crawford had a chance, then what you've seen against Madrimov would make you question that even more. Yeah, I think the size is going to be he's too big, because he's not just a big guy who can punch. He's a big guy with intelligence who can punch. And
with an iron chin as well, which also...
And fantastic footwork. People think footwork's about dancing. It's not. He has fantastic footwork. He slides in out of distance. He closes the gap really well. He can quicken his feet up. Even this version of Canelo can still quicken his feet up. And he can block everything. And Crawford's a sharp puncher. He's not a big puncher. He's a sharp, fast puncher. And he can get different angles on it because he has long reach. But all that reduces him up against a naturally bigger guy. And those punches won't have the same effect.
Didn't hurt Madrimov, didn't stop Madrimov. Sorry to interrupt. He stopped everybody at welterweight, went to 54, didn't put a dent in Madrimov.
Exactly, yeah. So that's nothing wrong with that. And
it was a great win. But
it's a fantastic win. But but again, you put that against Canelo, and you just think, will Canelo just bully him? And when you get caught with a big shot off Canelo, are you going to feel it? You're too small. He'll take the fight. You can't blame him because it's a chance to reach for greatness. And these fighters now, they're so good and they've done so much that they do take those extraordinary measures to try and be super great. And that's what we live about our favourite athletes. But it's a step too far for him, I think. But it's the sort of fight I want to see now. I don't know what's left. I mean, Crawford got loads of things there, but Canelo got nothing. That was just like fantasy fights now for Canelo, isn't it? That light heavy experiment failed for him, and I think it will fail again. I think he's just too small for that. He's too small for super middleweight. I think always has been, and he's grown into it, but he's naturally too small. Take that as you want to take it, but nobody is though, isn't he? He's the guy. They say he's 5'9". He's not much bigger than me. He's like I'm just under 5'7". I reckon he's about 5'8" ish. If 5'8", if that. I'm telling you, that's tiny for any super middleweight. All right, he's as wide as he is tall, but he's so good, and also with him, he wants it. He's one of the greatest Mexicans who ever boxed. He's one of the greatest. He's not the greatest, but he's one of them, and he's in the argument of that, depending on who you are and what you deem as what's better than others. So staying on too long again, a load of defeats against poor fighters or fighters nowhere near his ability would just be staying on that would drop him down the list. Losing the fighters who are really top quality. Even if you lost to Golovkin twice and retired, if they had a trilogy and he won one, lost two, that wouldn't affect his legacy, I don't think, because he's up against a really great fight, one of the best middleweights of his generation. So, but losing to a Caleb Plant who's a good fighter, or a Berlanga or someone like that, wouldn't look great on him, would it? In history, we'd look back and go, might be. It wasn't. It was the end of his career, but it was not if he came back 3 years later was like shot. He was still a good fighter. He just got beat because he came against guys he was a bully or something like that. Whatever they'll use an excuse. I don't know where he goes. I think it's Crawford and go. It might be Crawford and go for both of them.
Yeah,
actually.
It could be, couldn't it?
Yeah, because Crawford's not a young man anymore either, is he? So it might be a bit of a beating potentially. I mean, I'd love to see Crawford beat him. I would just for that. Now I'm like I'm not such a traditionalist as I used to be. So I'm like, oh yes.
Yeah, it has it's the obvious. You'd be lying if you said you wouldn't be interested in seeing what it looked like. That's what we always kind of talk about. It's a
beating Hagler sort of fight, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and if you're Crawford, obviously that is a huge law. Is the legacy? I'm quite sure it's quite a hefty paycheck as well for Terence Crawford at this stage of his career.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Obviously, you can't blame him.
One name that we haven't mentioned, have we all just given up on Canelo versus David Benavidez?
Yes,
is that just not going to happen?
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it, does he? And if he doesn't want to do it, it's not going to happen. And it's not that big that, for example, the Saudis would feel like they must make that happen. They want to make Canelo Crawford. That's what they want. So they're not going to throw their plentiful resources at it, and therefore it won't happen.
It might haunt him. If Benavidez at light heavyweight is not a success, then it won't haunt him. It disappears. But if Benavidez goes on to be a fantastic light heavyweight,
wins a light heavyweight and then a cruiserweight title.
But more than just win it, and then it's not you got to win it. Yeah, you got. Yeah, if he ends up going on and then beating Bivol or Better BF or something like that, then that's that thing that everyone's going to go on about. You were a great fighter, Canelo. You were. But as great Mexicans, and they'll go back to Zarate and all those, and they'll go, they never ducked anyone. You ducked him. More than all the other fights that you waited a bit longer. All fighters have done that, I think, even back in the 60s probably, where they had no control. But even their managers will hold back for fighters maybe a little bit. We'll wait another year, maybe a little bit shot.
Yeah, it's always been a business.
Yes, that's clever, isn't it? But but he's done that throughout his career a little bit, but that's understandable. But the Benavidez thing was a blatant, I don't have fighting him, because there was the risk reward thing didn't make any sense to him. You can understand, and I got no problem with that. But again, I got no problem with that. But it's the belts I got a problem with. Then if you got the sanctioning bodies, if they're ordering it and you're not doing it, you take the belt off you, whoever you are. They want a sanctioning fee, and all the rest of makes our sport like a little bit corrupt and shit because of that. Because everyone's thinking I can't afford to lose that money, and it's totally understandable. Because that's everyone's livelihood. But still, for the purity of the sport, Canelo can fight who he wants because he's a god. He's a super god. He's the biggest star in the sport. He can fight who he wants when he wants. But let those titles go away and let other people, let everyone be able. You might be the best, so that makes a mockery of that. But if you're not willing to fight your mandatory challenger, whether he be a guy no one's heard of, or a guy. It's like otherwise, we're back to the 50s when all those African fighters couldn't get a shot. Because you colour your skin, or because you couldn't sell a ticket. Then we're back to that then. I mean, we sort of never really left that. I mean, the colour thing maybe we have, but I mean, all that, if you're not a marketable fighter, you don't get a look in. And that, Lara.
Yeah. There
you go. He's a good fighter who's been hanging around forever with a regular title, which no one really gives any credence to, because no one wants to fight him because he's a pain in the ass. Doesn't sell a ticket. No one wants to. The public don't want to watch him. That's from Saturday night. No one wanted to fucking watch his fight. You want to falling asleep. I watched it the next day and I still fell asleep. I enjoyed it. If you're but it was an enjoyable fight to watch, and so you get avoided. So, but if Benavidez goes on to have a great range of light heavyweight or cruiserweight, as you said, then that's a stain Canelo will never be able to get rid of.
Just on that, I mean, because we've talked about it there, and yes, the risk reward and all of that stuff. Outside of the Saudi riches for Canelo versus Crawford, it's surely the biggest fight out there for Canelo.
It is, yeah.
Surely the biggest fight. That's 1 million pay-per-views in America, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely is the biggest fight for him outside of Crawford. And maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe he'll just think, no, I'm just going to do my own thing. But I just do feel like he's a businessman as well as a fighter.
Quite telling that in the build-up. Sorry, Andy. In the build-up to the fight, of all the names that we were hearing about potentially coming next for Canelo Alvarez, Conor McGregor's name was thrown in there, and it kind of makes you think like, if that's even part of the conversation. And full disclosure, Canelo's been asked that. He's going to answer a question and whatever it may be, and he's not going to say no to fighting somebody like Conor McGregor. He's had $100 million to fight a guy who's had one pro fight. But, the fact that kind of narrative is becoming more of a factor in the last probably year or so. And
I don't see him doing stuff like that. I know everyone has their price, but I don't. For whatever reason, I just don't see him doing something like that.
I do. I didn't. I
didn't.
I wouldn't have before.
A year ago, I would have probably agreed. Yeah, but I think even in the last year, we've heard like the talk of Jake Paul and things like that has kind of crept into the narrative.
I wish he would fight Jake Paul.
The thing is, remember when remember all this boxing, all this boxing, whatever it's called, the misfits, before all that, wasn't it? Whatever, the Jake Paul. When it all first started, we were all going, this is bollocks. Now we sort of go, well, it is what it is. And we accept it now, but we don't take any notice of it. We accept it. But first of all, we were all like, whoa, what the fuck's this going on? Yeah. Like the same with white collar boxing. What's this? When amateur boxing, well, what's all this? No one cares about it. So you just get
desensitized.
Yeah, I was going to do that. I don't know the right word to really say. Get used to, it becomes part of your culture.
But I think the fact that that's happened, I think that's quite a good thing because it is separate to professional boxing. Yeah. They've not really tried to make the overact. Jake Paul, he's an intelligent guy, obviously, and he just, he'll throw out these names, but he's got no intention of actually doing it. He's not an idiot. He knows what would happen if he were to get in there with Canelo, even on his most deluded day. But that's the thing with those guys. I feel they know, don't they? They know. They're happy to throw it out there, and the people who follow them will feel like because they've said it, then it's a possibility, and that, Jake Paul could beat Canelo because he said so. Their supporters, they just lap it up, don't they? But those two worlds have stayed separate, because the people in that world, in the Misfits world, know that they have no business, literally, in the professional boxing world, because it would just be a disaster. Yeah,
and it's important to know that this hasn't come from Canelo. But it's interesting how, again, it becomes more of a conversation when he's not fighting a Benavidez, and it's kind of become apparent that maybe he's not interested in the stiffest tests that are available, which is Benavidez, Morrell. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting that he said, maybe light heavyweight, if Bivol wins, I'll go up to light heavyweight. I was thinking, what about Biterbi? Have you fancied that? If he wins, mate, if he goes through Bivol in 4 or 5 rounds.
That fight Saturday, if some marks him Saturday, even though he won almost every round, you had to work for it. And I wonder whether that you might think, that wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And that's a mental. Sometimes you expect to have really easy fights. I never did. But, and then it ends up being a really hard fight. That's hard sometimes. While it's happening, you're thinking, and after you go, that wasn't meant to happen. I mean, he won everything, but I mean, that was physically tough. And you might think, I don't want to be doing too many more of these. So he might even shy back even more. I think he takes Crawford. I think you see after that, because the way he thought, we all thought he was going to bash Berlanga out. Everyone thought he was going to beat Berlanga, even if we thought Berlanga was going to give him trouble for a couple of rounds. I didn't think that, but just say, argument's sake, you're a Berlanga fan, you think, oh, you give him a bit of trouble, and then in the end, Canelo's going to catch up with him.
I wonder whether Canelo, when it comes to calling it a day, rather than kind of say, right, I'm going to have 2 more or any of that business, might just Andre Ward it and all of a sudden just make an announcement, right, that's me, done, I'm off, cheers, see you later.
I think he'd have a parade.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's just because Ward, as great a fighter as he was never that.
No, I know, but
it was kind of a very Ward thing to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was completely
I don't think it would be a very
character.
Thing to do.
He'd have a parade, but I think he might just think, that's...
I was just about to say, like, you think about his last 4 fights, he was an overwhelming favourite to win those fights, and pretty much all of them by knockout. John Ryder, Jamel Charlo, Jaime Munguia, and Edgar Berlanga. And they're 4 fights where he dropped every single one of them, and as you mentioned earlier, couldn't quite find that pace to get the stoppage. And yeah, maybe it is a case that he doesn't have to lose, or I'm sure, despite what he says, I'm sure he knows in his deep, dark thoughts in the back of his mind, he's maybe not the same fighter he was 2 or 3 years ago. The fighter's the first one to realise those things.
But that's hard. Like, I don't go to boxing gyms anymore because I can't do a round on a bag without being blown up my ass. I can run on the football pitch for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, but like I can't, without kicking the bottom shit. But I mean, I can't do that anymore, and that's frustrating because like, I can't. I don't want to be as good as I was. I'm not going to be as fast. I understand all that crap, but I mean, it's literally like I can't do it like I'd never done it. It's obviously not. That's how it feels, though. What the hook's slower, like way slower. Like, what's that? I want to go on and show off a bit, and I can't, and so I stay away. Can't do it. So so going down the gym is not. It's not a good thing for me. It makes me frustrated. Well, so that's not. It's not going down the gym used to be like a cathartic thing. When you just get all the shit out of you, it was good for you, and now it's just I can't do it. So it's just frustrating, and he might start feeling that, but he also might feel I'm still beating up all these young kids. In his mind, they're all coming up, and I'm just banging them all away. I could stay here forever, going bam, 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 bam. But I don't think I think he's going to think, I'll just take the Crawford, the massive money fight. We'll go wherever we go for there. It'll be my big, massive farewell. I'm fighting the guy who's smaller than me for the first time in God knows whenever, and then I'll go away with an extra 100 million or whatever it is, 200 million, whatever he's got asking for in the bank, legacy intact. Health, more importantly, health intact. That's what I think. You can't keep going on forever. He's been getting punched in the face since he was like 12. No. But certainly when you get in your 20s, that's getting dangerous then. No, you walk away, Canelo. You've had a great career. Whatever, people are going to say you ducked Benavidez, but again, if he doesn't end up being a fantastic fighter at light heavyweight, that will just disperse. And if it doesn't, you just go, well, I didn't beat him, but look at the other guys I beat. He beat Golovkin a couple of years earlier because Golovkin was his uber peak, but Golovkin was a great Golovkin at that point, and he could have avoided him, by the way. Could have stayed at super welterweight, couldn't he, for a little while. He went in there with him, like, you know what I mean, and he went in there with him again after the first. You could have avoided him after the first fight, couldn't he? Really, he could have, because he's Canelo. He can do what he wants. He wanted to go in again and make it right, and they were two of the best fights I've been at. They were a pleasure to be at. The first one was just one of the best nights I've ever had in boxing. So to be commentating that fight was just a pleasure. One of my highlights of my career, post getting punched in the face. And he did that. He made that. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted that. So you can argue about his credentials and what he's done. Though people can pick anything apart. But he did avoid Benavidez. No two ways about it.
Yeah, well, it remains to be seen what happens with him. They tried their best, didn't they, after the fight to get, what's happening next, Canelo? You can just sort of see the look on his face as he knows exactly what he's going to say. He said it after his last 50 fights or whatever it is. Going to go home, going to rest with the family and see what comes next. And you see that whoever does those post-fight interviews just looking at him and goes, just please say any name, please. But it makes, we'll wait and see. Always find it interesting the gap between September and May as opposed to May and September. Always wonder whether or not that impacts on his choice of opponents. Obviously a longer wait between September and May.
Yes, much longer, isn't it?
Yeah, but we will see. So that is all we have time for on our Canelo Berlanga review section of today's show. Don't forget to look out for our Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois preview, which will be coming out tomorrow, maybe. Keep an eye out and we'll catch up with you then.